Do you want to stand up or do you want to sit down?
I'll try to stand for a while.
Okay. If you need to sit down, I can move this, okay?
Okay.
The most important thing that you wanted to do today was to say some things that you've wanted to say for a long time to your own family and also to Shelley Mikkelson, who was, Ms. Mikkelson was the victim that you were convicted of kidnapping in 1972. What do you want to say to Ms. Mikkelson?
That I wish I could go back and undo what happened, and that I'm very sorry for any pain that caused her or her family. And I hope that someday she can forgive me for what I did, for what happened. And I wish I could, and I've told my family before that I was sorry for what happened, but I know some of them might not have heard it, but I wish that I could tell them in person that I was sorry for what I did, and wish that I could go back and change it, but I can't.
I know. How did you feel about your mom?
Well, to answer that, I'd have to really start with my biological mom. That since I found out that Mom was an alcoholic, and that I knew my grandparents were alcoholics because in 1979, Grandma told me that it took my mother's death to get them to quit drinking. And I have no harsh feelings toward my mom for being a drunk, but I think the best thing she did for me was that she signed the paperwork for me to be adopted.
And that's how you ended up with the Moormans?
Yeah.
And how did you feel about your mom and dad?
Well, I like my mom and dad because, like when I had this rock dropped on my head by two brothers, the only thing I remember was like something coming down my face, and I saw Mom running down the alley to me, and I went to her and fell into her arms, and next thing I do remember was waking up in the hospital, and Mom had the other bed in that room, and Dad used to tease me that I got more attention than he did, because she wasn't going to leave that room until I woke up. And I can't tell anybody how long I was out. But I know that there were pictures drawn by different classmates. So I figured, just by knowing that, I figured I was out for a while.
And so you know your mom loved you very much, don't you?
Yeah, she spent hours trying to teach me how to learn to read and write. And she never got mad at me when I couldn't. But she was always very, very patient. And go ahead.
I'm sorry, Robert.
I did, and I know that my dad he would get age-appropriate books for me to read with him when I was in the cab with him. And he would try to help me read then. And to me, I think my mom and dad helped me to read more than school did.
Well, school was tough, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I know it's extremely difficult for you, but we have to talk about what happened with your mom. All right? And it's hard for you to remember because it makes you upset.
There's
right?
a lot of things that I don't remember, and I don't know if it's because of the stroke or what, but there's just certain things I just cannot remember anymore.
And some of the memories you do have make you pretty sad.
And there's memories I wish I don't want to go into.
Right. Well, let's just do the best we can because there's some things the board might want to know.
I'll do my best.
All right. So there was a time in your life when you realized your relationship with your mom was different in some ways than the relationships other boys had with their moms. Do you remember when that was?
I would say part of it was when I was in my teens, because I thought that I would hear guys talk about comparing their girlfriends'
It's okay.
breasts to her mother's breast. And I thought that the guy was probably doing what he would do with his girlfriend with his mom. And I know now that that's not true. But back then I kind of messed up, and I looked at things a lot differently.
So even now, all these years later, we've been talking about these things a lot over the last 2 weeks, and even now, it causes you a lot of anxiety. You've been going to the medical unit after our visits and having a rough time.
There's things I don't like to talk about.
Right, okay.
Because I know that things that happened were wrong.
And when you tried to tell people about those things, what happened?
Nobody wanted to believe me.
So nothing changed?
And they talked about that the first time I talked about it with Dr. White or Miss Baker, I told people way back, my parole officer, when I was a juvenile, A.J. Kirkham, that there were things going on at home that weren't right.
And nothing changed?
Nobody wanted to believe me. And I also, I can't remember the teacher, but I remember talking to one of them about it. And so I just figured it was normal. That's why nobody did anything.
Right. So we've also talked a lot the last few weeks about the night that your mom died. And
there's part of that I do not remember.
Right. You remember some fragments of that night, but there are long periods of time that you just can't.
A lot of that night, I don't know why, I just cannot recall it. I get fragments about it, different fragments, but that's it.
Okay. But you know that you killed your mom.
Yeah.
And that it was wrong.
I accept responsibility for what happened that night, because the only two that were in that room was her and me, and so I know that I'm the one guilty of the crime, just like I'm guilty of what happened in 72. And I wish I could go back and undo it, but I can't.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Robert.
I have a question, if I can.
Do you have any?
Mr. Moorman, when was the first time that you thought about killing your mother? That you can remember?
No, sir, because I don't remember. Because can I correct a couple of mistakes?
Yes, sir.
The shooting of my mom in whatever year it was in 60, somebody said a shotgun. It was a 22 automatic that my dad had, and they had a whole bunch of break-ins around the neighborhood, and I was real sick, but I had the gun in my bed, and Mom came in and sat down beside me, and I was pulling it out to show it to her when it discharged. And then they sent me to the state hospital for observation. And I don't remember what all they tested me for, but I just wanted to correct that part. It wasn't a shotgun, it was a 22 automatic.
Did you ever plan to kill your mother?
No.
Did you ever want to kill your mother?
And I've heard people on the prosecution side say, oh, you did it for money. And that is 100% not true, because anytime I needed money, all I ever had to do was ask Mom. Oh yeah, I got a lecture. But at the end, Mom would say, how much did you want? And I might not get the whole amount, but I always ended up with part of it. And I was getting ready to start a business, and Mom was going to I guess you'd call it, like get stock, she would become the majority stockholder. For that way she would literally own the business.
And that business was going to be?
RHM Enterprises International.
And you were going to, what were you going to make?
Well, there was a fishing lure.
Fishing lures.
And I was thinking about special merchandise because I'd seen an ad in a newspaper, and somebody else had a family member was already doing the business, so I thought maybe that could be part of one of the other enterprises.
Mm-hmm.
But Mom and I talked about that I had a very if I had money, I spent it. So I was very glad that Mom wanted to be in charge of the business. And I've had people tell me, "Oh, you did it because you're something about money," and that, to me, those people don't even know my mom. I'll shut up now.
Thank you, Robert.
You have any other?
And the reason that I asked that question, I have reviewed, like my colleagues, a lot of information on this matter, and I believe that we're going to hear from the Pinell County Attorney's Office that there was a lot of evidence, if you will, pointing to the fact that Mr. Moorman planned to kill his mother at that period of time. I think I recall something about the purchasing of a knife. There were a number of things, and again, I'm sure we will hear that, where there was actually a plan to kill his mother on that 72-hour furlough on January the 12th of 1984. And so I wanted to obviously hear from you.
I had no plan because she was going to, what they call it, she wanted me to choose an executor that would be over her estate, and she wanted me to choose between my cousin Paul and Don Nichols, and at that time my cousin Paul and I were still not talking to each other, so I chose Don Nichols. And Mom told me when she came down on the furlough that she was going to wait till I got out on my April parole board to have me sign the paperwork. And I was already, that was fine with me, because that way Don would be in charge of the money, in charge of anything else that my mom wanted him to be. And
okay.
I do.
The purchase.
To me,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
The purchase of the knives. What the state has argued in the past is that Mrs. Moorman had cuts on her body that were before death, and so inflicted before death. And so the state's argument was that the knives had to have been purchased before she died. And actually what Mr. Moorman told the police, although he doesn't have any memory of talking to the police on the night of the crime, we don't have any reason to dispute this, that those cuts were made with a razor, which presumably was already in the room, and the knives were purchased after her death. And so what the knives, I think, are indicative of are this childlike, panicked plan after she died because something had gone so horribly wrong, and he was immensely inequipped to deal with a crisis of that proportion. And so he, with his lack of judgment and lack of problem-solving abilities, the result was this crime, what happened after the crime. But of course what happened after the crime is completely irrelevant to any type of premeditation or planning before it.
All right, thank you. Got a question, Mrs. Wilkins?
Yes. Marilyn Wilkins, and Mr. Moorman, this question is for you. What happened that made you assault your mother that day?
To be honest, I cannot remember. And I don't remember who started it. I don't know if she did or I did.
Started what?
Whatever led to me hurting her.
Was it an argument?
To be honest, I don't remember. I have been trying my best to remember, because I've even, my own self, have been wanting to know about who started it, what was it about. Because Mom and I hardly ever argued. And that's one thing, anybody that knows Mom and my mother and I, that we hardly ever argued about things. I knew that when Mom gave me advice about stuff, that she was trying to help me. And if she would give me a lecture about money, it was because I was spending too much, or I was buying things I shouldn't buy. And I had already been on 3 furloughs with her, and we had never argued on any of those. And that's why I've always tried to wonder what in the heck who started it? Did Mom, or did I, or was it a combination? I don't know. But I know that I'm responsible for whatever it was.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you. Is any other? Yes, Mr. Lasota.
Yeah, Mr. Moorman, Jack
Yes,
Lasota. I'd like to talk to you briefly about the so-called codicil that was found in your cell
Do you know what he's talking about, Robert?
after you were arrested for your mother's murder. Would you tell me about that?
Do you know what he means when he says codicil?
No. Is that letter about
The stop.
This is the letter we
yeah,
talked about.
that I do know about, because Mom and I had been talking on the phone about it for quite a while, because I had just got off being investigated by the Attorney General's office. And that was the part where Mom was going to become the majority stockholder of the business, and that I cannot tell you who helped, if I wrote it when Mom and I were talking on the phone, or it's somebody, one of the inmates that knew about law and legal stuff, it was helping me write it up. But I was supposed to type, Mom went over saying that something about 809 North Humphrey and something about 114 West Elm. But I can't, to be honest, I can only remember that she wanted it written up in such a way that it would be part of the business or something like that. But she said that she was going to become the majority stockholder. I would be, I guess, president of it or something, but she would be the one in charge. And I was very much in favor of that, because she had better businesses than I did. Every time I tried something, it fell apart. But that's all I can remember about that piece, because my attorney showed it to me, and I remember writing part of it, and then she said something about stocks, and I said, oh yeah, Mom and I had talked about that way before that incident, because she asked me to have it written up, to write it up, and we would talk about it, but I had not got it typed up yet, so that's why I didn't take it with me.
Because she had funded your first business, right? The driving school, and that didn't quite get off the ground.
Nope.
So now the fishing lure business was going to be the next
Yeah,
one.
that was what Mom wanted me to make sure that it worked, and that she would be in charge.
Because driving wasn't necessarily your strong suit.
Nope.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, sir?
Kind of.
All right. This is Kirschbaum.
Yes. Mr. Moorman, do you remember killing your mother?
No, ma'am.
Not at all. So you don't know how you killed her?
I remember that it was stated on a tape or something how I did it, but no.
Do you have any memory of cutting her up?
Just what certain officers had teased me about sometimes. They said that I put her fingers in a restaurant or hamburger joint downtown, that was the name of the place, Fingers. And that's the only thing I ever, because I don't remember cutting Mom up at all.
What is the recollection that you have of that day?
Oh boy. Doing a sexual act with her.
That's the only thing you remember?
Yes, ma'am. And I have been willing to take truth serum, lie detector test, or anything else that they think I'm. But
What kind of sex was it?
oh boy. Don't like this part.
Did you have intercourse?
No. It was me playing with her breasts. And that was the only part. And I do remember one of the other fragments that I carried her into the bathroom, put her in the bathtub, and she went under the water, and that's when I knew something was wrong.
Because you were trying to wake her up because she wouldn't wake up.
And I knew something was wrong, and I then put her back in the bed. And I do not remember cutting her up.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Mrs. Wilkins?
So that was on the first day that your mother arrived in Florence?
Yes, ma'am.
Did she ask you to touch her, or did you touch her without her wanting to be touched? Is that perhaps the argument you had?
She never, I don't remember her saying anything, or I know we talked about the business and we talked about some other things, and then.
And that's in the motel room?
Yes, ma'am. And I remember going to bed, and I don't, and after that it's like nothing even
And
happened.
were you sleeping in the same bed with your mother?
No, ma'am. She had the bed closest to the door that went into the other room.
You were in another room?
No.
You were both in the same room?
Yeah, but it was like two motel rooms that had doors between them.
Right.
Well, she had the bed closest to the door.
Okay.
To that door, and I had the one closest to the bathroom.
So what happened?
That I don't know. That's what I've been asking myself. I just remember her and I talked about the business and some other family things, and then I went to bed because we were going to get up and go do some shopping and some other things. And she had a little, I can't remember what it was, brown piece of paper that we were going to go down to the bank and sign.
A check?
I don't remember what it was. It was I just remember it being a brown piece of paper, and we were supposed to go to the bank the next day for me to sign it. And I didn't know what it was.
Okay. So
And
then what, all right.
Then I went to bed, and
What is the next thing you remember?
that fragment about playing with her breast.
And you don't know how that came about?
No, ma'am. I do know that she was tied up, but I don't remember doing it. But I know that
Was she gagged at that moment?
I don't think so. That I don't want to say yes or no because I don't remember.
What was she saying to you?
To be honest, I'm not meaning to be disrespectful. I'm not going to make something up because I can't remember what she said.
Okay, no.
But I just remember seeing my hands doing things, and and then it just left.
What left?
The dream or whatever it was, or the remembrance or whatever it was, and then ever so often I would have the one where I was taking her into the bathroom, and but I do not remember dismembering her, and I don't know about tying her up. I do not remember.
Do you remember taking her body parts to different people?
No, ma'am. Like I said, the only part about that I remember is what those guards always teased me about putting her fingers in that restaurant or whatever it was, place that was named Fingers.
And then the next thing you remember is what?
Was sitting in a car with a police officer, and then they took me to the police station, and we went to this room, and there was all kind of people there, and there was some kind of weird camera, and then I don't remember things again, and I know that some people say that there was a tape, and I don't know if there was or not. I know my attorney has gone over with me about it, and that's how I know that what it says happened. But I can only say that I'm responsible for what happened and no one else. And I wish I could go back and undo it. Because, like I said, Mom and I I had been on furloughs before with her, and had no trouble, we went shopping like we were planning on doing this. And I don't know where people get these ideas that I was planning on something.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
One more question.
Is this first one?
Yes, Mr. Moorman?
Yes,
Just
ma'am?
one more question, sir.
Huh?
One more question. We heard from the Mars that are friends of yours. They read what part of your letter indicating that you were acknowledging that you have done some bad things. Well, what are you acknowledging as bad things?
Things I did when I was a juvenile, and things that with other adult women.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Minnesota?
Yeah, well, this is going to be a little delicate. I don't know what else to do. Mr. Moorman, now you indicated one of the things that you remember in the Blue Mist Motel was fondling your mother's breasts.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, sir.
Do you remember any other sexual activity besides that?
No, sir. The only other thing I remember was carrying her to the bathroom and putting her in the bathtub, and that was. I don't remember any other sexual acts.
So you don't remember any intercourse of any kind?
Mom couldn't have intercourse because that was one thing that her dad and her used to talk about. Because when Dad was stationed in San Diego, my stepdad taught recognition to the Navy, to the officers of Japanese planes and stuff. And I guess you'd say my stepbrother or my other is buried over there in San Diego because Mom gave birth. And then shortly after that, she had a total and complete hysterectomy. And
Right.
she couldn't have children again, and that's why they were trying to adopt, and that's when I came around.
Well, is it then correct to say that none of, that in the years of sexual contact that you had with your mother, intercourse was never involved?
No. There was always things that, oh boy.
That's okay. You just answered the question.
Just everything was from the belly button up.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Thank you.